Hello, everyone. I hope you're enjoying the conference. My name is Barnabas and Kovacs, and this presentation is about network security. The title might suggest otherwise, but my talk will not be about boring network vulnerabilities and exploits, but hopefully less boring stories of the InfoSec history, how systems got pwned in the past, and other stories. Regarding the fact that it's kind of late in the afternoon, this will be an easier talk with epic fails instead of hardcore hacking. Also, feel free to join the Slido channel during the talk. You can find the handle at the bottom of the slides. It's Hacktivity if it's unreadable. And in the meantime, you can discuss how bad my presentation is. But if you had any questions, we'll go through them at the end of the talk, and I try my best to answer them. So, one of my main aspirations to put this presentation together was the bio of one of my best friends' Twitter account. Since I forgot to ask for his consent, I tried to make it as GDPR compliant as possible. So here's his page stating security is sexy. So when I first saw this, I thought, well, if security is sexy, it must look something like this. No sting bugs were harmed in the making of this presentation, actually. The other reason I made this presentation is when I got into business, my colleagues always joked around, referencing some hilarious stuff that happened somewhere in the history of infosecurity. And most of the time, I didn't get the reference. And I really hate it when I don't get the joke. And I have to ask, but why is it funny? And they only go like, oh, it's too long, and they proceed with their businesses. And if there are any of you who have ever found themselves in similar situations, you know what I'm talking about. So to learn some stuff about InfoSec history, and I wanted to share with others so they won't find themselves in a situation like I had. And last but not least, learning from others' mistakes. I mean, it's free knowledge, it's free experience, and have you learned how your neighbor's server just got pwned might just save your server as well. So what's on the menu for this talk? A peek on cybersecurity standing and importance and how it was shifting in the past few years. A story on two of the major operating systems and how they failed. A story of an antivirus software. The real life but twisted Tony Stark. And an honorable mention because I love my country so damn much. So back to the statement of security is sexy. At first glance, I thought, that's bullshit, man. Security is totally unsexy. But on the second thought, it got me thinking, is it indeed unsexy? Or is it sexy now? So for a long time, a couple of years ago, security indeed was unsexy. It was rather a nuisance, something inconvenient that must be done, rather than something that is worth to be worked on. Also, it costs, in many cases, the goal was compliance and not a secure product. And it even costs money, time, energy, workforce, and doesn't even know the feature. And on top of all that, security is unnoticeable. Only the lack of security can be seen. The user can't see or feel the security in the product. Only when an attack or a breach happens, their data gets stolen, a security problem arises, and then it hurts a lot. Although there was a try from Microsoft at the time, and it was actually ahead of their time, when they put security as one of the main goals for developing Windows Vista, and they allegedly put $100 million into security development. But what most end users felt from Vista were the insanely higher hardware requirements, Vista's user-unfriendly graphical user interface and the bad user experience, and the damn annoying UAC prompts. Actually, the majority of users even disabled UAC or just set it to LOL, and basically that's just a big middle finger to all that security improvement, all that $100 million. As IT evolved, the lack of IT security became a growing problem in the industry as cybercrime has actually a shit ton of money put into it. And I'd like to mention state funding here also. Attackers have developed refined and more sophisticated tools and methods, and it's no longer about someone downloading some free porn.exe. The rising costs of breaches, and it's more than money. It's reputation, business trust, losing customers, prestige. Another aspect of the security push was Internet of Things, with a typo in it. Actually, as the old joke goes, S in IoT stands for security, and there are indeed lots of devices with zero to little security, posing a threat on a scale that has never seen before, and regulations like GDPR, which slaps companies for a pretty hefty fine if they don't care about their customers' data security. So from my point of view, it's a sorry, not sorry thing. At least security gets some attention, if not in other ways, then by force. Companies now had to put effort in making their products secure. Because in addition to losing reputation and customers, the GDPR fine will be a pain in the ass. And most products already are on the same level of functionality in terms of features, just like social media platforms or messaging applications, cloud services and data storage. So the competition has to be taken somewhere else. And it's also a good opportunity for branding and advertisement. As users are becoming more security and privacy-oriented, realizing how much big data companies know about them, just looking at the latest scandals of Google or Facebook, even the most uninterested users in terms of security wouldn't like to be peeked or spied on by very big companies or even governments. So security is sexy nowadays. Next up, we'll take a look at some cases where something have gone definitely wrong in terms of security of some products and caused a massive fail, ownage, something backfiring, something that echoes back a few times, or something that Twitter went crazy about it, but this last one is actually literally anything, because Twitter goes crazy about anything. So first on our list, the operation system master race, the Linux. Actually, I have a Linux native friend who once said, Linux is safe because malware only exists for Windows, thus making Linux secure. But is Linux really more secure than Windows? Well, yes, but actually no. First off, malware exists on most platforms, if not all of them. Windows, all Unix platforms, including Linux, Android, as well as macOS, iOS, and even for BIOS. What does make a point, although, is since Windows is much more widely used and much more complex, making possibility for more bugs, the sheer amount of threats is much higher. But the weakest link in every system is the human factor, mostly the human factor. Misconfiguration can open huge security holes, not even talking about the bad user habits. Let's say someone new to Linux has to develop something on Linux and encounters an issue, and oh my God, I keep getting permission errors, let's try using this. I swear I'll revert back when I'm done, and we all know when it will be never reverted, most probably never, and been there, done that, but I'm not proud of it. All in all, security awareness is much more, a security-aware user is much more less likely to get infected or hacked, regardless the used OS. So, you might think, I've already said some things, but why is Linux in this presentation? It's because 2019 is the year of Linux desktop. But so was 2018 and 2017. I guess you see the pattern there. So I did some research on the topic. How come that every year is the year of Linux desktop again? And actually, I found the information on Reddit that every year is the year of Linux desktop since 1998. But I had to scroll more to find the truth. You get it, the scroll of truth. Well, it was fine for me. So actually, the first reference was in 1494 by Luca Pacioli, in which he says, I'm sure next year everyone will use Linux in Italian. But one thing is sure about Linux years, and that is the year of Linux security fails was 2009. They got nominated for 4 Ponies Awards that year. One of the most serious vulnerabilities in Linux OS was, at the time, was Linux SCTP forward chunk memory corruption. You can see the CV number in the title too. What we'll see are the Linux kernel development team's reactions to the bug, stating it has an unknown impact and it's causing system crash, leading to denial of service. For some reason, the Linux kernel development team continually assumed that memory corruption bugs are only denial of service. Well, just because they only could get denial of service from a memory corruption bug, that doesn't mean a skilled hacker can get a root shell out of it, actually. So a security researcher who happened to be an exploit writer also covered the case and did some research on it. And given that you know the target kernel, it's an extremely reliable, nearly one-shot exploit. It worked on Ubuntu 8, OpenSUSE 11, Fedora Core 10, and even security-enhanced Linux, which covers pretty much all the popular distros at the time. And if you knew the target kernel, the target could, so I won't be mentioning the details now, how the exploit worked, but if you want, you can ping me after the talk, and I will send a paper to you, which covers the case. And it's a really amazing paper, because even I understood what he said, and it's something that's really rare. So the exploit could control the slab, which means a piece of the memory, and it could overwrite the slave pointer close to the overflowing buffer, which means that this slab is a continuous piece of memory where the pointer pointed. So basically, the memory piece was the attacker's, and he could or she could even control overwritten data in the memory field. So that's pretty much game over, actually. But let me mention another one. Same year, same operating system. And any local unprivileged user may have sent a unicast or a multicast netlink message to UWD. The message is treated as a privileged message from the kernel, as messages on netlink socket always come from the kernel. So this would allow the user, for example, instruct UWD to create a dev random device file with chosen minor and major device numbers, giving read-write execution permissions to any device that the attacker chooses. And again, that's game over, pwned. So in 2009, Linux had a pretty good year. 4-by overflow resulting in reliable remote disabling of security-enhanced Linux. They happened to improperly patch a 7-year local bypass of float ASLR implementation on arbitrary root command execution via an environment variable, and silent disclosures of numerous kernel vulnerabilities. Bonus style points to Linus Torvalds. Actually, it was a year before, in 2008, but still, who said, I personally consider security bugs to be just normal bugs. And I don't have the reason to think it's a good idea to track them and announce them as something special. Also, he said, I refuse to bother with the whole security circus, is that I think it glorifies and thus encourages the wrong behavior, because it makes heroes out of security people, as if the people who just fix normal bugs aren't as important. I'm not saying he doesn't have a point, though, and I mentioned this later in the presentation. So These kinds of jokes were pretty trending on Twitter a few months ago, so I took the courage to make one too. If he says, all kernel memory corruption issues are only denial of service issues, and he doesn't handle bugs because it's an unknown impact, and security bugs are just normal bugs, then he's not your guy, he's the guy from the Linux kernel development team. So, before before the furious Linux fanboys will raid me after the presentation, let me bash Windows a little too. Stupid users exist on Windows 2, and there are a lot more of them. Not only in sheer numbers, but also as a percentage of the total users too. So I'd like to mention some infamous names that Microsoft Windows had to deal with or dealt with in a terribly wrong way. First is Configure and Downed Up, going by other names too, in 2008. This firm utilized the Windows Server service overflow, going by the number, and infected most of the internet Windows desktops over the course of 6 months. The bug itself, like most of the good flaws in Microsoft products, were found in the wild, and it was being exploited in the wild for an unknown period of time because before getting to the Microsoft security response team. Actually, Configure managed to infect everything from the UK Air Force to the city of Houston's municipal court, along with millions of systems in between. And the worm forced the court system to shut down, and police had to stop making arrests for minor offenses such as speeding and minor drug possession. So it was a gift day to all the small-time drug dealers and racers. Although Configure was overhyped, it was still one of the worst worms of 2008, and it pressed shooting for half a year. The second one is Flame. It happened in 2012. Flame was pretty cool at the time, since it wasn't only a bug, but some cryptography was involved too. Long story short, attackers or Flame authors have found a weak and exploitable Microsoft certificate with code signing enabled, which basically means they found a pot of gold with some rainbow at the end. And one of Microsoft's terminal server license signing services, something like that, still used MD5 hashing, which had code signing enabled too. And the attack was the following. The attacker had to create a counterfeit copy of the certificate and use it for code signing some of the components in the malware. The next step? Well, this makes your code appear like it originated from Microsoft, which means that you can pretty much pawn any Windows machines to Windows Update. I'd call it a 10 out of 10 move. So Microsoft had learned the hard way that MD5 is obsolete, and all they had to do was to visit the page, stop using md5now.com, but they didn't. Next up, WannaCry. I'm sure everyone have heard of WannaCry. So WannaCry was in 2016, and shutting down German train infrastructure, everything from German trains infrastructure to the UK's NHS was literally a child's play for it. But what was the causes? Well, take a legacy bug, which has patches available, and a leaked, not NSA 0-day that exploits the bug mentioned before. And make it from a country where the offensive cyber units are tasked with bringing in their own revenue, basically making their living and their families living out of it. Despite all the destruction, it was pretty rad, and a work that makes all the worms like Configure and Morris worm looks like children's toys, because it demanded ransom, it came from nation-state actors, it used vulnerabilities in unpatched Microsoft Windows systems, and it was extremely aggressive, like all worms are, but still. And I'd like to refer back now what Linus said, because the guy who stopped WannaCry was actually a researcher going by the nickname Malvartech, and actually he is not a hero. He just did his daily job registering a domain that caused the worm to stop, and not only his sandbox, but all over the world. But he got 10 grants from HackerOne, 3 years of pizza, and all the media attention he didn't want because he got arrested by the FBI later. And the personal favorite of mine, which I encountered when reading about Microsoft, was this one. The Internet Explorer 8 implements an anti-cross-site scripting filter, a mechanism which can detect certain types of cross-site scripting attacks. The filter was so effective, in fact, that when abused by attackers, faked cross-site scripting attacks could even block the embedded JavaScript on the page, therefore disabling client-side security mechanisms, therefore enabling cross-site scripting on websites and web pages that would be otherwise immune to cross-site scripting. For example, framing and clickjacking attacks were available this way, but I think it's still amazing how good Microsoft can be sometimes. Okay, let's take a break from scolding operation systems. Even after reading the title, McAfee Antivirus shouldn't need any comments. I'm sure about that many of you have tried to avoid it like the plague. It got installed with literally all kinds of software. They even did a checkbox swapping trick when you actually had to click the checkbox to not to install it. So what did McAfee do wrong in addition of slowing the PC and giving a hard time to uninstall? Well, McAfee acquired ScanAlert in 2008 along with their service called HackerSafe. This HackerSafe service gave a certification on your website that it was HackerSafe, safe from hackers. But how did they ensure that it was HackerSafe? Well, according to an interview, ScanAlert went in like a super hacker, not a regular, but a fucking super hacker, and super hacked your website. Then it checked for cross-site scripting and SQL injections, misconfigurations, patching issues, then threw out all the cross-site scripting flaws if it didn't use them already. But why? Well, as they stated, cross-site scripting can be used to hack a server. You may be able to do other things with it. You may be able to do things that affect the end user or the client, but the customer data is protected within the server and the database, and it's not going to be compromised by cross-site scripting, not directly. Then you get a shiny certification badge that your site is hacker safe. Talking about McAfee, another small incident happened on the 21st of April in 2010 when McAfee Virus Scan Enterprise pushed out a definition update. This update affected Windows XP machines from Service Pack 1 to 3, so pretty much all the Windows XP versions at the time. And according to McAfee, it could result in a moderate to significant performance issue. Well, as per the definition update, McAfee Virus Scan Enterprise identified a Windows core component, service host exe, as a Trojan. So it did what a good antivirus does. Quarantined it, shut down the machine. After this, when you turned on the PC, Windows couldn't be loaded, which resulted in an endless reboot cycle. So indeed, I agree with McAfee. Moderate performance issue is when your PC gets fucking bricked. So the McAfee antivirus had some rough days in its history. But what about its name giver? Let's take a look at one of the most notorious characters in history of InfoSec, John fucking McAfee. Actually, it's not fucking, it's David. But who haven't seen the video? Hands up. Oh, I see some hands. Okay, we'll watch the video.
Fuck. Send. Oh, hello there. My name is John McAfee. I'm the founder of the McAfee Antivirus Software Company. Although I've had nothing to do with this company for over 15 years, I still get volumes of mail asking, how do I uninstall this software? I have no idea. I really need to quit. As I said, I've had nothing to do with McAfee software for over 15 years. I've had more pressing things to do. But recent events have made me change my mind. I've had, over the years, many responses from users who are complaining about the difficulty in removing the software. I'd like to read you a few things. Holy fucking shit. I was drawing for like 5 hours straight on this marvelous drawing, and I had to do a big-ass scan that slows the shit out of my computer. It was McAfee, of course. My computer's always really fast, but that son of a bitch has to come fuck it up. Here's another. My free trial for McAfee, or however it's spelled, expired. When it expired, it blocked Pornhub. Fuck McAfee. Fuck them in their stupid faces. I hope they all get dick and cunt rot and die a slow, agonizing death for limiting my porn use to Xhamster. No one should have to use Xhamster. I tried one final time and got the Urban Dictionary definition for McAfee. McAfee, a barely passable virus scanning program that updates at the worst possible times. Tends to render your computer completely useless whenever it starts an update, which it doesn't ask to start, and you cannot cancel or pause. McAfee updates at horrible times, almost like the creators want you to die. So I finally remembered how to uninstall McAfee antivirus software, and I've asked my friend Bartholomew to walk you through the steps. This is my lab tech, Bartholomew. He's going to take you through step by step the process of uninstalling the McAfee antivirus software. Well, say hello, Bartholomew. Yes, so if you need me, I'll be over here, and good luck.
The procedure for removing McAfee antivirus software from your computer is as follows. First, make sure you have a full backup.
Yes, Bartholomew. Back it up. Back it up. That's right.
Yeah,
Very
John.
important. Back it up.
Sir, should I be reading the instructions for the Mac or PC? They're really quite different. Depending on which edition and version of McAfee's anti-malware software is installed on your computer, you may have to click on Remove, Uninstall, or a similarly named option to begin the uninstall process. When finished, reboot the system. John, are you getting this?
Yes.
You may have to download McAfee Consumer Product Removal Tool. John?
Yes.
Does that sound about right?
Well, not completely, you know. I mean, it's always there. It's watching. It's been watching me for years. Every time I turn on the fucking computer, it's there looking at me. You know, something went wrong. 15 years ago, I had some beautiful software, and they took it over. I don't know what they did. It was like the time I hired that Bangkok prostitute to do my taxes while I fucked my accountant. It was terrible. The same fucking thing is going on now. But I know what to do. I know exactly what to do. Believe me, I've got a fucking solution right here.
So back to McAfee. The reason actually I put McAfee in the presentation is, first of all, don't get me wrong, I don't want to praise him. And I think he's indeed a total medlet, but look at this guy's biography. That's why I said he was a real-life Tony Stark, because he's so fucking crazy. He's born in 45, he's 74 years old. He ran for president in 2016 and wants to run for president in 2020. Taught yoga and wrote books about yoga. Considers himself as a prime target for the IRS, the Internal Revenue Service, because he doesn't pay taxes since 2010. And for hackers, just outsourcing all computer-related purchases to other people and changing his IP addresses several times every day. And doesn't even use his antivirus carrying his name because it's the worst software on the planet. Additionally, he has 47 biological children and stated on Twitter that he would literally eat his meat if Bitcoin won't reach $1 million by the end of 2020. For the curious guys out there, Bitcoin is around $8,000 now. So McAfee has like 14 months left to have Bitcoin worth 125 times its present value. So I started investing back Bitcoin. And if the AV didn't make his name a fame, then this guy is a total meddler by himself. So, Bitfee. I don't know who have heard about Bitfee, but the reason McAfee here is Bitfee actually. The whole stuff happened a year ago in the summer. Bitfee is the world's first unhackable storage for cryptocurrency and digital assets. And there's nothing like McAfee protecting your unhackableness. Being so sure of this unhackable trait, McAfee set up a bounty of 100 grand, which later increased to $250,000 with a scope so narrow that it's incompletable. Hackers had to recover a key from an unaltered device that doesn't store a key. So it's an impossible bounty, but still, if you wanted to participate, you had to buy the device for $120 and an additional $50 to ensure serious inquiries. So I guess it's a nice marketing move, but a security researcher outraged and pointed out that the whole bounty is a sham because the reasons I mentioned before, and the term unhackable is a false claim. At the time, Bitfee insisted that to the term unhackable. So according to this, at the time, Bitfee didn't count the following points as being hacked. John McAfee displayed on the device, getting root access on the device, playing fucking Doom on the device, and this was a 15-year-old guy actually, modifying the device, recording, then sending the private key to a malicious third party, and actually hacking the device as close as possible to the way Bitfee wanted it to be hacked, but I guess it doesn't count as being hacked because they still didn't pay the bounty. So by the time the shitstorm was so hard that security researchers and Twitter blown up, and in response, Bitfee removed the claim that their device is unhackable because it caused a significant amount of controversy, and closed their current bounty programs because it have caused understandable anger and frustration issues among researchers. Well, John McAfee taunted and went hardest motherfucker on a researcher offering cryptocurrency worth of $20 million on his Bitfee wallet, paying travel fees for this researcher for literally going up to his house and hacking the device, which I mentioned earlier was the impossible deal. And another Twitter user pointed out that there's no point in kicking a dead horse and accidentally calling McAfee a wannabe in the process, only to get schooled by McAfee himself stating he fucking invented cybersecurity. Do not mess with John fucking McAfee. So after that, the guy elaborated on his comment, making McAfee feel so bad about himself that he actually apologized. So the honorable mention, it's not just a security, but also a PR fail. And it's really close to my heart. It's a hilarious example of how things can happen around here. More than 2 years ago, in 2017, the Budapest Transport Authority, I will refer to it as BKK, launched the first version of their online ticketing system. And we didn't have to make much to have it phoned, like 1 day or so. So, high school student found a vulnerability where one could buy anything for an arbitrary price. For demonstration, he bought the monthly pass, which goes for 9.5 kilo forints, and he bought it for 50 forints, which indeed wasn't a big trick, because the big hack only consisted of modifying the POS data, which is not a really hard thing. But the problem was that there was basically zero validation throughout the whole process. Also, this vicious hacker happened to be living 300 kilometers away, never used the pass, and said he wouldn't use, and reported the issue immediately. but still got prosecuted by the operating company, T-Systems Hungary, and was arrested at his home, had their digital assets confiscated, the usual stuff that happens. But wait, there's more. The system also stored all credentials, like email and password, in a clear text format, and one could have logged in with default admin credentials and had all access to all user data in the system. And they used HTTP for sending credentials in fucking 2017. And from the operation standpoint, anyone who abused the ticketing system was breaking the law. And technically, it was true, but I don't think any black hat with good OPSEC would go ahead and prosecute himself for stealing the whole database and selling it on the black market. So another issue for the list of issues is copying passes was easy. And most ticketing inspectors didn't have the equipment to check it. And NGO even tried to board the public transport vehicles with copied passes and succeeded 10 out of 10 times. The story has a happy ending, though, at least for some people, because the accusations and charges were dropped against the high school student who bought the pass for 50 forints originally. The chief information security officer from the operator's company was fired, and the same company publicly apologized for the shitstorm created. And throughout the whole incident, the social media pages of both the BKK and T-Systems Hungary were taken under 1-star rating heavy artillery fire, which they haven't recovered from since, but hopefully this wasn't the reason why they chose to further investigate the issue. So the moral of the story is respect laws and don't go self-proclaimed white-hatting or bounty hunting around here, at least not with government stuff. So thank you for your attention. And if you have any questions or thoughts, want details about anything mentioned in the presentation, feel free to reach out for me on any of those addresses or post on the Slido. I'll check it in a minute. So thank you for your attention.